Okay, welcome to the channel. This is going to be um, my review, opinion, overview, whatever you want to call it, of The Silo, Season 2, Episode 10, the final episode of Season 2. Just dropped tonight, so I just got finished watching it. I made a few notes and just thought I would go over it for people. Uh, my opinion of the episode, very good. Very, very good. Really enjoyed it. Um, There's some people have complained about the pacing of the show, saying it's slow. I yeah, I can give them credit for that, or I can agree um, with that. Uh, but it's telling a story, and it's wanting to build towards a peak. So you have two things happening. Sort of the story's divided between Silo 17 and 18. In 17, you have Jules and some other people, and Jules realizes that she made a big mistake by just walking away because they didn't see her die. Potentially the same thing that happened in the silo that she's in, people will go outside and die. So she's desperate to get back to her own silo to stop the people from potentially coming outside. Now, in silo 18, the story is of the brewing, increasing, growing rebellion um, of the people in the silo, especially in the lower regions, mechanical, where Jules is from, or where Jules worked at least. You're seeing that building. You see Bernard, head of IT, up at the top, trying desperately to stop them. Um, and that is a continual build. It's getting more and more serious every week. And then the other little element, they have Lucas and him trying to decipher the former head of ITs, the person who was there before Bernard, left a coded message. If you ask yourself why, because we find out that, or have found out that even the watchers are being watched. Bernard's being watched. That there's another set of players in the game that are always watching and can react in a very negative, dangerous fashion. And that's why I think his name is Salvador Quinn, left a coded message which Lucas, who is a friend of Jules, um, Bernard puts him in charge of trying to figure out what the message is and decode it. So that's what's going on in 18. We know what's going on in 17. The question is, and do we get answers to some of the questions we have in this final episode? We get answers to the questions in this season. We don't still get, we get a little bit more information, but we don't get answers for the very big questions about who has built the silos, why are people in them, who caused the issues that led to all the destruction, what's going on. I guess is a strange way of putting it. But yeah, all those big questions haven't been answered. We're just getting more and more information, more story, to building towards finding out what these guys or what's going on. Which is why I like this show. It's compelling. I've read the books. I'll tell you that. Um, if anybody's read the books, haven't seen the show, you'll find that they do deviate from the books a bit. Yeah, you could say quite a bit. They're keeping to the story and the characters, but they've added a huge number of a bunch more new characters to give more stories, I guess. And they've changed items in the show, and they've changed sort of the order of the books and such like that. Um, I enjoyed both of them. I enjoyed the books immensely, and I was interested in seeing them put to live performance. So I like this show. It's a good show. It's there's I was talking to some people. There's an argument going on whether this show on Apple TV or Severance are better. Some people like Severance. Some people like this show. Anyways, Okay, so let's get into what's going on. So, um, back in Silo 17, we'll start off with Jules because she's the main character. Uh, they go into the IT director's habitat, rooms, apartment, whatever you want to call it, because Jules had previously discovered um, another spacesuit to go outside. Hers, she destroyed trying to get it off when she first arrived. She needs another suit because it is not safe to go outside. So she was working on a fireman suit because it would be they're sealed apparently against well fire and to allow the firefighters to have oxygen. Um, so she was working on that. She did find a spare helmet that was stolen apparently, and then she discovers another suit when she's looking around. Um, but they go into this apartment, and in the previous episode, we discovered or were told by Jules that, or Jules discovered that Solo, rather than being the IT Shadow, which is what he's always claimed, was actually the son of the IT director when the people went outside. So he was told to go in there. His father put him in the vault to protect him. His father was killed by the sheriff, um, which is why he's so screwed up. But he's been alone in the silo. Well, somewhat alone. We found out last week there's other people in the silo, and that Solo, you could say, accidentally killed the parents of some of those people. They've been there for years. They've been trying to get into the vault because of the food. Solo wouldn't open it because of what his father told him. But we found out last week that the parents of the kids that are left over actually figured out the combination, got in, and they shot Solo, which is why he's very reluctant to trust anybody. Um, while they were looting the food, Silo locked them into a food storage room, and that's why they died. Um, but it kind of explains his character and why he was so reluctant to trust Jules when she first showed up, and has been suspicious all along. And it was traumatic for him when he learned about how his parents died, and it's kind of fucked him up, for lack of a better way of explaining it. Anyways, Solo, when he goes back into his parents' place, he hasn't been there for years. He takes a bit of a flashback and actually sees his parents in a bit of a vision, and he's looking into a mirror and just kind of shows his parents. But he had a lunchbox that they took out of a classroom, and he puts it back sort of in a perfect square of dust on a table, and he says that's where it belongs. Um, but Jules says she has to go. She can't waste any more time. Solo wants to stay, sort of reminisce a bit, and Jules says, "Yeah, okay, I'm going." But as Solo's standing there, sort of picking up things, setting them down, he finds a scrap of paper with the safeguard procedure written on it, and it clicks for him that that's very dangerous. He runs out to Jules and says, "Look, you got to come see something." And she's like, "I got to go. I don't have time for it." And he said, "Well, it'll save the people in Silo 18." So obviously, she says she's going to go see it. Um, but Solo explains safeguard to Jules so that now Jules understands what she's facing if she goes back. Um, but Solo says the people who went outside didn't die all at once, which um, that's sort of one of the deviations from the book in that there's no people going outside and not immediately succumbing to what's outside. But anyways, that's fine. So he says he's trying to remember because he said his parents actually had solved the problem of the safeguard thing. So They're trying to figure out what it is. There's just a work table there with a bunch of papers, and Solo says, "Well, it's here." So Jules finally asks him to try to remember. Um, but Solo's racking his brains. He says he does remember his father telling the sheriff it was safe to go outside. That his mother and father had split. That he never did see his mother again. Um, but they told the sheriff they had fixed it and that people could go outside. Um, Finally, after some more closing his eyes and trying really hard, he remembers there was some kind of pipe, and they need to look for the blueprints to find it. So they start going through the papers on the desk to find it, um, and they do. That it's in judicial. It's in there's this pipe that they believed, or Solo says his parents were able to block, although they were concerned about doing so. Um, but anyways, this pipe is in judicial, and they decide, yeah, we better go take a look at this thing. So they go off there. They get to just outside judicial on the 14th floor, and there's an explosion, or at least they can feel an explosion, and decide that that is back at 18, and Jules can't stay any longer. So they get ready for her to uh, depart as soon as possible. So yeah, that's a story up till then in 17, and then it sort of shifts back to 18. Um, in 18, we have Shirley and Knox talking to Jules' father, who they tell she's still alive. And he says he'd known that, but he didn't believe people telling him that. He thought they were kind of crazy. Uh, but he's the only med down in the lower section below the barricade. They said it's important that he comes with them, and he says, "What's more important than medicine?" They say it's they're going to war. So at this point, they shift to Lucas. He's climbing a big ladder in that pit. You can see the sheer walls. He gets out, and immediately there's a guy there to take him into custody because Shirley said so. But he nails the guy and knocks him out. Um, so he takes off basically. Uh, Cut to Walker's repair shop. Knox goes there, um, and there's a meeting to go over the plan they have. Remember that Walker's being observed by Bernard. So they indicate that they're going to be blowing the generator. So Bernard sees this. He goes out. He gets a hold of the guy in charge of the raiders, and he says, "Send everybody down to secure the generator and also start arresting people." So the raiders all take off down. They actually knock the barricade down. Sort of ingenious by using a drum on a chain to knock it down. Um, but anyways, Lucas is trying to climb up because he has to talk to Bernard, and they grab him. Knox and Shirley with some other people attack the raiders, and they get arrested. They knock down Billings' door where him and his wife are staying. How they know that he's there, I don't know. But anyways, they grab him too, and they throw them all in the lunchroom on whatever floor they're on, because one of the ones there they make a makeshift prison. And at this point, Bernard thinks it's over, so he kind of calms down. We see Sims and Camilla, his wife. They're kind of observing. They think that maybe Camilla has picked the wrong side, but they decide they'll wait and see what happens. Um, in the lockup, Shirley sees Lucas. He's asking her about Jules, but he basically says, "Whatever, it doesn't matter anymore." And this is based on the information he was given by the voice down in the very lowest levels of the silo. Um, so when Knox and Shirley and Walker are arrested, they're taken separately to the sheriff's office. They let Walker go, which is exposing that Walker is the bug or the plant that's working for Bernard. The head of supply, her ex-wife, rejects her. Says she hopes that Bernard sends her out to clean. At that point, Walker says she wants to go see Bernard. So the head of the Raiders, takes her there. Um, Jules' father, he appears. He's got a body on a stretcher. Um, he gets past some of the Raiders on the stairs, but when they're going down, something falls off the stretcher, which will become crucial later on. But the Raiders, they find explosives um, attached to the generator down in the very basement. So they've got everybody locked up, and they're taking them up to this makeshift prison to put them in there. Anyways, Bernard Walker comes in. Bernard says, "What can I do for you?" And she starts telling him a story. She just tells him about the hand signals, which then we find out that Knox, I don't know if he really did suspect her, but she's able to use hand signals because in mechanical it's noisy and they had to develop a means of communicating. But anyway, she was able to tell Knox that they're being observed, and basically Bernard is kind of like, yeah, so. Um, but she keeps talking about the generator and stuff. Really, what she's doing is stalling Bernard. But anyways, it's good. At this point, the doc discovers a lost timer. He gives one of the sheriff's deputies Jules's watch and a message to tell her if she ever gets back. Um, but he basically then sets off the explosives that they have on his own, and he blows up 3 or 4 levels worth of stairs. So he's basically effectively trapped the raiders down below, and all the insurgents and everyone else is up above. So they come out of their prison, they break out of their prison, and they start heading up. Um, when they open up the prison, Lucas, he dashes off, leaving everybody else behind. Um, and yeah, that's the start of the rebellion. Unfortunately, the people still think that they can go out, so they start climbing up the stairs. They're looking for Bernard. Um, Lucas gets up as far as Bernard. Bernard's sort of come out of IT after the explosion. He's told what the remaining raiders have to protect IT, but Lucas, because he knows he's being watched, basically whispers something to Bernard, which we are not privy to. But at the very end of their conversation, he says that it's true. That's why Meadows quit. That's why Lucas is actually quitting. And at this point, Bernard is kind of falls apart. Basically, he's definitely difference on his face. Um, I'm just showing you some of the trailer. Um, but he starts climbing up, and he meets Sims, and he tells Sims, "Hey, you still want to be my shadow? Well, here." He gives him the key and the passcode and says, "You're the shadow now." But Jules knows that she has to leave. Back in 17, she finds the IT director suit. It's full of holes. Um, she has a confrontation with the girl in the bow and arrow because that girl is always blaming the other one that they call the Eater, and they find out her name's actually Hope, for everything. And Jules finally tells her to shut the F up, and you got to work together and this kind of stuff. But and if you're mad, blame the people that put us here. Um, anyway, she has to go, but she finds out that Solo's disappeared, and he's taken her firefighting suit, the one that she will have to use now that she finds the IT directive suit is full of holes. They say, "Can we fix them?" And no, you're not going to be able to fix it in time. So we see Bernard going up to what's, I guess, is his apartment. He grabs his suit and a backpack, and goes out, and he's going into the top cafeteria, which is connected to the sheriff's office, and he goes into the sheriff's office, kicks everybody out except for one guy, and just kind of sitting there defeated. Lucas goes to his mom's house. Sims shows up, points a gun at him, and says he wants to know what he told Lucas, or Bernard. Lucas says he's not going to tell him. He can kill him, but he's not going to tell him. Mainly because he knows he's being watched by whoever it was he saw down at the very bottom of the silo. So he tells Lucas tells Sims that if he wants to go see the legacy, he better go do it now while he still has time, which is, kind of foreshadowing. Knox, he is sprung from the sheriff's department, locked up by one of the sheriffs that worked for Billings, who's also was locked up, and he sees people going up, so he knows that he has to stop them, so they start getting into a bit of a fight about that. Anyways, Jules goes to where she had gone into the water before and sees Solo emerging from the water, and he tells Jules that he was testing her suit for her. He figured if he didn't drown, it should be good enough. He didn't have any problems with it. Jules tries to hug him, but he kind of shakes her off. But they basically, Jules is getting kitted out, ready to go. The kids ask her if she's coming back, and she says she doesn't know. She doesn't know what's going to happen when she goes back to 18. Solo, in a private moment, asks her if she will come back, and she says she'll do everything she can to come back, and they have a hug. So we see kind of a resolution of all the conflicts between the two of them, that they end, on a good point at least. Because Jules now understands why he did what he did, and he sees that he didn't want to ever go in the water, but he did for her to try to test her suit out. Basically, she's ready to go. So Jules tells the kids to leave because they're going to open the outer airlock. Again, we have the shift. We're shifting fairly quickly back and forth between Silo 17 and 18, but there's a big fight in the cafeteria, one trying to get to Bernard, and the two different groups, the one led by Knox and Shirley, trying to keep people in, and then there's the other character, the guy that threw the firebomb at the sheriff's department. He's the one that's trying to get people to go outside, and in the middle of their big fight, they see Jules coming over the hill. So immediately they all stop and stare. They're not sure who it is until she gets close and they can actually see her face. She then cleans the screen, and there's a big cheer from that. And at this point, she holds up a sign that the kids had painted for her, which says, "It's not safe outside. You cannot come outside." So she then goes and tries to get in to the doorway, but she can't with just a crowbar. Sims shifts to Sims. You see him racing up the stairs to get to IT. He has the key and the code, so he opens the door and goes in, and the voice asks him who he is. He says that he's this person, Sims, and he wants to save the silo. The voice says he wants to too, but then I don't know why his wife Camille and their kid are there, but he turns around and Camille and his kid is there, and the voice says he's to take his kid and leave his wife behind. So when Jules is frustrated that she can't open the outer airlock, it suddenly opens. She goes down the stairs, and Bernard emerges in his suit. So he's pointing a gun at Jules, but she said, if you wanted to kill me, you would have killed me by now. He says that he wants to go out. He can't take it anymore. Whatever Lucas told him is shaking him to the core. He understands that even though he thought he was in control, he never was. So he said the gun is for the final whatever, in case the pain gets too much. I'm not sure why he said that. Anyways, but Bernard and Jules are getting closer and closer, and Jules says, "Oh," he mentions the safeguard procedure. She says she knows what it is. She mentions the pipe, and he knows what the pipe is. She says, "I don't know what the pipe is. I don't know who's controlling it." Bernard says, "Well, I know what the pipe is. I don't know who's controlling it." But Jules tells him that thinks that she can stop the pipe and not kill everybody because that's um, what it's intended for. Uh, so then the airlock stops closing, which would lock the two of them out. But Jules races in, and Bernard follows her, saying, "No, no, there's fire." And just when the door closes, you see a bunch of fire vents spewing flames, and Bernard yells, "Get down!" And you see Jules going, like laying on the floor or dropping to the floor. So, I mean, the question that'll have to be answered in three. Now, Jules is the main character, so she's not going to die, and she does have a fireman suit on, so flame should not be a bother. But we don't know what's going to happen to Bernard, whether he's going to live or die. So that'll have to be resolved in the next season. I mean, with Camille being told to stay by the voice in IT, it's kind of obvious to me that here's Camille. She's going to be she's going to be the new IT director. The question will be then, will she turn on her own husband? Because she's always been the one pushing the buttons and plotting and scheming and stuff. So I don't know if he gets in the way, will she get rid of him? Don't know. But that is more or less everything for the silo 17 and 18 for the season. And then we get almost like a post-credit scene, like a Marvel movie. Starts off just when Bernard and Jules hit the floor and the flames come, you hear rain. And then it cuts to a rainy street in Washington because you can see the White House in the background, and you see a guy walking across the street. He gets close to a doorway, and a guy steps up with a Geiger counter and checks him, and you can see on the screen that he has no radiation. It's green. The guy asks the guy with the wand, "Have you ever had it red?" And he's like, "Nope, never." But the guy goes in, well-dressed young man goes in, and he sits down with a young girl. They have ordered drinks, and they're talking about each other. They've looked each other up. We find out that the man is a congressman from Georgia. 15th district is what he represents, and the woman is a reporter. Um, she tells us in the audience that he has his master's in engineering, and because you can't get into the Senate without having military service, that he then joined the Army in the Corps of Engineers. Um, so they kind of, you can kind of tell he's interested in her, but then she goes and blows it by starting to ask him questions about, oh, there was another thing that she makes mention of New Orleans. So we don't know anything really about New Orleans, but you hear mention of a dirty bomb and Iran. Um, Basically, wants the reporter's really there just to pump him for info. Um, she wants to know if the dirty bomb attack was real, and if we're going to, we being the U.S. government, is going to fight or strike back against Iran. And he basically uh, isn't going to answer any of her questions. So he gets up and you can kind of tell disappointingly, is going to leave. Um, but he gives her a small bag, and in the bag is the famous Pez dispenser that we've seen 2 or 3 times in the show, in the hands of Bernard and George, Jules' original boyfriend, and a bunch of other people. And I was like, what the heck is the significance of the Pez dispenser? Well, now we find out that obviously, if this is the Pez dispenser we've seen in the show, then the young lady who has Pez dispenser, must have survived and went into uh, an early rendition of the silo. So that's the end of the show. So yeah, that's it. Again, like the show, like the acting, like the direction, like the writing. Um, we found out a lot in this season. One, that Jules, that there were other silos, that there were other people in the silos. Um, we saw Bernard's fall, I guess you could say, in that what Lucas discovered. I guess they were the faithful and operating, that they were in charge and knew what was going on, and found out that they didn't actually know what was going on. So a lot of loss of faith between Billings and the sheriff's department and Sims and everything. Um, but yeah, we did get some closure in some of the items in this season. The question will be for the next season would be the survival of Jules and Benard. I would imagine at least Jules is going to survive. I don't know if Bernard is going to um, not survive, given that Sim's wife Camille looks to be his successor for potentially. I mean, I know what happened in the books. I don't know if they're going to carry forward. Like I said, they have deviated somewhat from the books. However, this post-credit scene with the senator and the reporter meeting does sort of correspond somewhat to what's in the second book, which is called Shift, and gives you a lot of background. So, uh, Yost, the showrunner, basically said that he wasn't sure how he was going to implement the second book. There's some really good information in there about the history of the silo and why and who and all that stuff. So he's going to have to figure a way of still showing in the story that the way he wants to present it, but um, also to impact some of the information, because there's a lot of really, really important stuff that happens um, in the second book. And I would say the story, without what happens in the second book, cannot progress to what happens in the third book, which is the conclusion of the story. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they can move forward. But they have Apple has paid for 2 more seasons of the show. I believe the third season is actually already in the can, and they're about to start the fourth season. So, um, again, I'm not sure because of their jumping around or what they want to do. Um, this is when Walker finds out that she totally has fooled Bernard, and there's a destruction caused by Jules' father when he blew up that stretcher full of dynamite. And this is there's Lucas coming up from down below with his burden of understanding, being told what's going on, and him trying to get to Bernard to tell him where he does this. And then after that, Bernard is not the same person, which is he wants to go outside the same way as Meadows, a person he killed, but was interested in. When she found out the same information, because she was listed as one of the 3 people by the voice down at the bottom of the pit, um, to have spoken to them and learned the secret that Lucas has. We still don't know what it is that is he learned down there, and what's caused, and has that information has caused him to resign as Bernard's shadow. Um, and there's a key that gets handed to Sims, and Sims is now in charge of IT. Bernard, again, with a very confused look on his face. This is when Bernard makes Sims his shadow, but again, he's kind of like a broken man, because he's understanding how everything that he's done is more or less for naught, because there's other people pulling all the strings. So, yeah, it's a good show. I really enjoy it, and I highly recommend the show. Okay, thanks.